While rummaging through the obscure nooks of the towers of Notre Dame, a young Victor Hugo discovered a trace of a life forgotten for centuries. Deeply engraved into a wall, he found a single word, carved by a hand that had disappeared into the generations of the Middle Ages. The word was Anaki, the Greek capital letters for fatality or destiny. Hugo noted that the word was black with age and imprinted with Gothic calligraphy. He began to wonder about the soul in torment who left the stigma of unhappiness on the brow of the ancient church. This single concept, that human lives are governed by an inescapable, tragic force, became the primary engine for the narrative he was about to write. This map illustrates Paris in the 15th century. It is a city defined by a massive imbalance: the squalid, crowded streets of the populace on one side, and the towering, authoritative mass of the cathedral on the other. At the center of this power structure sits Archdeacon Claude Frollo. He is a man of immense learning who has exhausted the permissible sciences and turned toward the dark, obsessive pursuit of alchemy. High above the streets is Quasimodo, the bell ringer. Deafened by the very chimes he loves and isolated by his deformities, his entire existence is defined by his service to the church and his dog-like devotion to Frollo. Their world is disrupted by La Esmeralda, a gypsy dancer who represents everything the church and the city's legal system find threatening. These three figures occupy radically different rungs of society, but they are about to be pulled together by the same inescapable pull of fate that Hugo found carved in the stone. The turning point occurs at the pillory. Quasimodo has been sentenced to a brutal public whipping for an attempted kidnapping ordered by Frollo, yet the archdeacon watches the torture and says nothing. As the crowd jeers, Esmeralda is the only one to show mercy. She steps forward to give the parched bell ringer a drink. This simple act of compassion binds the outcast to the dancer, setting a chain of events into motion that will eventually destroy them both. Frollo's repressed life begins to unravel as his obsession with Esmeralda turns into a jealous fury. He cannot endure her love for the shallow Captain Phoebus. In a moment of blind madness, the priest stalks the couple and stabs the captain in the dark. Frollo escapes into the night, leaving the crime to be discovered with Esmeralda standing over the body. Using his influence and the city's superstitious fears, Frollo ensures that the legal system condemns her as a witch, using the captain's death as proof of her sorcery. The priest turns the power of the church and the law into a personal weapon, effectively becoming the fatality that will lead an innocent woman to the gallows. Just as the execution is about to begin, Quasimodo swings down from the cathedral's heights, snatches Esmeralda, and carries her into the church, shouting, "Sanctuary!" For weeks, he protects her within the safety of the towers. He watches over her with a tender, unrequited devotion, shielding her from a world that wants her dead. The peace is broken when the vagabonds and outcasts of Paris mount a massive, desperate assault on the cathedral, intending to rescue their sister from the law. Quasimodo misunderstands the mob's intentions. He sees them as enemies and defends the church with terrifying violence, raining stones and molten lead from the parapets. While Quasimodo fights off the rescue party, Frollo uses the chaos to kidnap Esmeralda. He gives her one final choice, to be his, and when she refuses, he delivers her to the king's guard. The physical sanctuary of the cathedral held against the invading mob, but it could not survive the betrayal of the priest who controlled its keys. The narrative concludes in the public square, where Esmeralda is hanged, her life extinguished by the very laws Frollo manipulated. From high on the tower, Frollo watches the execution with a look of cold, satisfied despair. Quasimodo looks from the hanging body of the girl to the face of his master, and finally sees the archdeacon for who he is. In a final act of grief and rage, Quasimodo shoves Frollo over the cathedral's edge. The priest falls, crashing onto the pavement far below. With both the woman he loved and the master he served gone, Quasimodo is left entirely alone within the stone walls of his world. The bell ringer disappears from history. He seeks out the cellar of Montfaucon, the massive vault where the bodies of the executed are discarded. Years later, investigators find two skeletons locked together, one belonging to a woman and the other with the distinctive crooked spine of Quasimodo. The moment the guards attempt to pull the two skeletons apart, the ancient bones shatter and crumble instantly into a fine white dust. Hugo's work stands as an indictment of a society that discards its most vulnerable members while allowing institutional corruption to thrive. The word Hugo found on the wall was eventually scraped away, and the people who lived beneath its meaning turned to ash. But the characters and the spirit of that 15th century city remain accessible to anyone who opens the book, preserved in a narrative that refused to let their tragedy be forgotten.